evening. Apart from increased trauma and social emotional needs of schools, results indicate that principals are facing emerging challenges never before seen in education, including the ongoing barriers to a quality education workforce, learning loss and widening academic gaps, existing systemic inequalities, barriers to demonstrate meaningful growth and change, the overwhelming effect of poverty, increasing pressures on students' achievement, the breakdown of communities, the lack of financial resources, and a host of other issues, many of which coalesce to further complicate the capacity of schools to deliver quality and robust education to a school-age population. In today's podcast, in this series by Galen University, we have invited 3 people who are very competent on this topic, who live it actually on a daily basis and have lived it for many, many years, to explicate further on this leadership crisis or this pending leadership crisis in our education, that our education system faces. Our 3 guests are, first and foremost, our guest from Trinidad is the principal of one of the prestigious girls' schools there. It's equivalent to our St. Catherine's Academy here in Belize, Miss Sharda Maharaj. And then we have Dr. Karim Juan from Sacred Heart College in San Ignacio. And we have Mr. Walter Garbutt, a veteran principal and school leader and educator, and currently involved as a coach in our leadership program. I'd like to welcome all of you on behalf of our provost, Dr. Eve Aird. And I'd like to start this podcast by asking you to briefly introduce yourselves. Let's start with you, Miss Sharda.
Thank you, Dr. Barrow. My name is Sharda Maharaj Ramjatan. I am the principal of one of the more progressive. I don't like to use the word prestigious. I think it carries this connotations of inequality in education. So I tend to use the word progressive. It's a progressive girls' college in existence for only 20 years. And I really selected the word progressive because in 20 years, a lot has gone into this college to take it from a point where we took in students who were under the benchmark, didn't even pass SCA, to one of the leading colleges now in dominating the field in academic success and student achievement, and in terms of the caliber of students that we have. I've been in education for 25 years and over, and I've been in school leadership for roughly around 15 years. I was promoted quite young at the age of 35. Now, don't do the math. To school leadership, starting as a vice principal and then working my way through to principalship later on. I have a passion for working with students and working with others, but I take the example that I take my lessons really from my own children, because being a parent as well as leading a school environment, it really helps you to see things from 2 sets of skill set, one from the point of view as a parent and the other from the point of view as educator. I've spent a number of years also improving my expertise in terms of research and knowledge. So having gone through the diploma in education, the master's in education program, and I just recently submitted my thesis for examination, focusing on how teachers transition into school leadership in the secondary school setting in Trinidad, looking more at the post of deputy principalship in Trinidad.
Thank you very much for that warm and extended introduction. We're going to hear a lot more from you in this half an hour. So we'd like to ask Dr. Karim Juan if he could introduce himself.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Barrow. Good evening, everyone. I am presently serving as the academic vice principal of Sacred Heart College in San Ignacio Town. I am serving in that capacity for the past 12 years. Previous to administrative duties, I was a math teacher, so my background is in math, after which I pursued my studies in educational leadership. And that's it for now.
Well, thank you, Karim. Short and crisp, thanks. And now from my very, very good friend and colleague, Mr. Walter Garbutt. Walter, can you introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Doc, and a very pleasant good afternoon to Trinidad and to San Ignacio, Santa Elena. I am Walter Garbutt. I've been a teacher all my life. And because of that, I haven't worked a single day in my entire life because I've been doing what I love to do. I started teaching immediately after primary school, actually. Parents couldn't afford to send me to high school. Maybe that was a blessing. I came up through the pupil teacher system, went to Teachers College, then to UWI, etc. But I have actually been a secondary school principal for 22 years and a primary school teacher and principal for another 22 years. I worked at the tertiary level in one of our sets as manager for 2 years, and I've been a local manager in rural primary schools in Stan Creek and Toledo District for 3 years. So I've spent my entire life, but I still feel like I'd be happy to go for another 49 in working with education at any level. Once is to touch the lives of children, adults, the teachers, the people you care for, and the community. So appreciate very much, Doc, the opportunity to share a little along with these great people here this afternoon, that we can be of benefit to the Caribbean, Central America, and by extension to the world.
Well, thank you, Walter. And after those introductions, we might as well just get right into it. Now, this is the question that I want all of you to spend about 2 minutes or so answering, right? What, in your view, is the greatest challenge facing school leadership at present? What, in your view, is the greatest challenge facing school leadership at present? And we want to start with our guest from Trinidad, Ms. Gordon.
Thank you, Dr. Barrow. Dr. Barrow, the thing is, you're speaking about present and leading schools in the present context and climate, managing the fallout of the pandemic and the impact it has had on schools is not an easy task. Nothing could have prepared, or nothing can prepare school leaders presently for what we have to navigate in terms of our students. In fact, we were never prepared nor trained for this. And I think understanding the context in which we operate, one, understanding that the present education climate is very, very different from when we operated pre-pandemic, and understanding where we are going in the future in terms of preparing students for exams or for outcomes that has not really changed to suit the needs of the changing climate that we have. That in itself is a leadership challenge and a leadership crisis on its own. I think with experience and in terms of stepping up to the plate, it has caused all school leaders across the globe to really tap into their potential, their creativity, and find ways to maneuver and navigate the present situation in the interest of all of our students. My friend here from Belize, Mr. Garbutt, he really touched me just now by, when he said about being a teacher right after, at a young age, as a spin-off from a pupil. And we could be how qualified presently right now. None of it has lent us the skill set that we need to navigate what is really a new and really evolving situation in which we are navigating schools. We've always had different challenges as school leaders, but the present climate in terms of you're referring to is one that is affecting all school principals, especially in Trinidad right now, secondary and primary, in terms of the know-how or the psycho, the social, the emotional aspect of school leadership that needs to be combined together to help navigate our pupils through this time.
Well, Walter, since there was such a connection between you and Sharda, what for you, right? What for you over this 49 years of service?
The short answer, Doc, would be lack of adequate resources. Because I have worked in rural areas, rural Toledo, rural Stand Creek, and rural Belize, we have always had challenges to be able to bring those students up to standard. But that experience, that what you could say like COVID could be a negative, can be turned into advantages because it makes you more creative. And living in rural Belize where there's no electricity, no, in many places, no running water, and lots of the things that you take for granted, especially in a privileged school, say in Belize City, or in any country, when you get into the rural schools, you can't, the ceilings are broken, things are just falling apart. But the creativity of the teacher and the students and the community shines much brighter. And you are able to catch some of those students that you wouldn't imagine the kind of grades that you accept them in secondary school. And they, when they go to institutions like in Belize that are prestigious, junior colleges, they are on the dean's honor roll, which means that our children throughout the country and throughout the world by extension are always full of potential. But you don't get the best because the resources are not equal. Well, the resources have never been equal, so let's not discourage that. So more, instead of saying what is being done, what can be done with the meager resources that we have to bring those students up. Because now many students don't have their laptops, their gadgets to work on, but you can take something simple and convert it into useful resources. Your creativity and resourcefulness can make a difference. So I have never been at the point where I become pessimistic or believing that I can't. You throw me wherever there is a school and students, and I believe we can bring them up. There's a beautiful song that says, bloom where you're planted and then you will grow. So wherever you go, in whichever school, and sometimes probably a weaker school or a poorer country may be the best place to begin, because you become more resourceful and creative, and you take people not where they want to go or where they even know where they're going, but where they should be going because of the leadership experience and the educational experience that you've had. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Walter. Karim, Walter have emphasized this whole thing of capital, financial resources. He says it makes a tremendous difference, but also human capital, the kind of creativity that the people who work in the system brings to the table is particularly helpful in moving the school system forward. What would you say, given the fact that that you come from a school that is a little bit more resourced than most of the other schools in the country, what would you say is your single most important challenge to school leadership today?
Well, just capping off what Mr. Garbutt said, yes, resources tend to be limited, but from experience, something that we try to, and Mr. Garbutt alluded to, is that the human capital surely exceeds financial capital at any institution once you could get staff buy-in. From my experience, the greatest challenge for school leadership at the secondary level in our context at Sacred Heart College and in the wider context in Belize, I think is a lack of a model that would enhance teacher accountability. Having taught a few leadership courses with other secondary school leaders, that seems to be, and it's also prevalent at Sacred Heart College, it seems to be one area of school leadership that is not clearly defined and clearly executed, where teachers are held accountable for their performance, for their actions, simply because there's not rubrics in place, and also it is a challenge to devise these measuring rubrics to hold teachers accountable. So from my experience, I find that to be a challenge at our school, and like I shared, other school leaders also shared that concern.
Mrs. Maharaj, right? What, in your view, right, would then be the professional standards, that education leaders must have in order to respond to all these things? What you said, what Mr. Walter said in terms of resources, what Dr. Juan said in terms of teacher buy-in, what do good school leaders bring to the school? What qualities, internal qualities, do they have to have in your view? What skills and what dispositions do they have to have from your perspective?
Right. So you must have vision. You must have vision as a school leader, where you are, where you want to go. I mean, Mr. Garbutt, my school is also in a rural community. It's an all-girls college in a rural community. The vision of my board of education, it's a denominational school, and the vision of my board of education was that if parents could not send their children out to school, they will bring the school to the children. So they set the school in a rural community, all-girls school, at a time when parents were unwilling, with a mindset that, they wanted young ladies to benefit from an education. So in putting school leaders in place, I think the first thing is a vision, and you must have commitment to that vision. You must have an idea where you are and where you want to take your school and where you want your students to go. Where do you want to see them evolve into, and things like that. And it's not just about academic accolades and achievement alone. It is also about enabling and empowering students to socially reconstruct their own communities, their families, their societies, and so on. You must have compassion and care. If you don't have that for what you do, a lot of things are just done in a technical manner, and it's not really done in a manner where it shows that kind of compassion and that yearning for growth and that yearning to see students evolve. And the thing is commitment, and the understanding that school administration is not a spin-off from your teacher role. It's completely different. And that understanding brings with it the skill sets where as a teacher, you have to first understand that as a teacher, in my capacity, I'm in charge of delivering the curriculum in a particular subject area and helping the students to achieve in that particular subject area. But as an administrator, you have the responsibility for an entire school population, whether you taught the students or not. And administrators going into school administration, one of the things to understand basically is you are now responsible for all, not just one, not just some in a particular subject area, but for all. And you have to have the commitment to want to always do better by your students and better by your school community, in spite of the challenges that you may have, because school administration is not an easy task. It's not a simple task. It's almost a 24-hour job. And embracing that as a professional, it makes things a lot simpler. And then finding the creative means to deliver and to keep improving, keep helping your students, and having that commitment to having a student-centered or student-focused school, that goes a long way in the professional realm.
Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Maharaj.
Sharda, you could call me Sharda.
Oh, okay, I'll call you Sharda. Karim,
I think
given those complexities, right, that that Sharda just described, right, and the challenging context that context both local, national, global, right, within which schools now operate, and the whole resulting impact that have on educational leaders of or institutions like yours, like the ones that Walcott has gone through, or Miss Maharaj. Is there a need now, right, for us to reconceptualize our thinking really about leadership that fits these contexts, right? That fits these contexts. You can't lead any educational institution if you are not able to contextualize those leadership competences. What are your views on that?
Yes, I think as leaders, it's important for us, yes, to have vision, as Mrs. Sharda explained, and for me, what's important is to have vision and also to let that vision remain in the forefront. As surprising as it may sound, a lot of times in leadership, we could get carried away doing everything, and we lose focus of the students that we're there to serve, and the students we want, and the caliber of students we want when they graduate, and the impact they would have on the society. And so I think it's paramount that as leaders, we keep that at the forefront of our vision, at the forefront of our goals, and only by doing that would we be able to translate that same vision to our teachers. And similarly, a lot of teachers would come in contact with 100 students every day, but yet that vision or that objective is somewhat lost in the profession. And so I think it's crucial as leaders that we keep focus of our objective. What's the purpose of a child going to high school and graduating from high school, and ensuring that all our activities, be it academic, be it extracurricular, focuses on the students. And I think once a leader could dispel that passion to the staff, then each student will become important in the institution, and that would motivate everyone to work toward those goals. But like I said, surprisingly, when you analyze it, a lot of times that get lost in the busyness of the profession.
Walter, thanks, Karim. Walter, you are involved in training educational leaders, particularly in coaching, and you are one of the main coach at in our certificate program in educational leadership. Could you share with us the extent to which you now believe that through coaching might be one way in which we can reskill, we can retool our current education leaders?
Absolutely, Doc. And it's been a privilege and almost like a second lease on life, working with these educators. And it makes you even more hopeful. I ask the teachers I work with sometimes if they're just a special selection, because they are clearly focused on what they want. And I keep emphasizing that if you are the head of what is called a quality child-friendly school, please don't forget it has to be a quality teacher-friendly school too, and a quality community-friendly. Why do I say that? With the lack of resources and the challenges we are having, and I've had them, as I've said, because I work in mostly rural areas. When you can buy into the community by acknowledging them, the business places, the leaders of the community, the board, the PTA, the student body, when you buy into these bodies and into the community, you have a little world of your own. My experience at Independence High School was very much that. The leaders in this community, I could almost go to them and say, I need $10,000, Mr. Zabani. I need $10,000, Mr. Donka. I need, Mr. Flores, I need to build a classroom, and Mr. Ashcroft. And it is amazing. But in reflecting on this, Doc, talking to a dean, a principal, and another leader in secondary school, I think maybe institutions would do well to teach financial literacy and budgeting. Budgeting with an emphasis on accountability and reporting back to parents, back to staff. Because in many cases, we involve the teachers and the students and the parents in fundraising, but we do not report sufficiently or urgently. I can hardly sleep when I can make my financial statement to report back to the PTA, the staff, the student body, because they have confidence in you then that the resources that they are helping you with, you are utilizing the way you said, and they see the building going up, you take pictures, you send to them. If you've got a little magazine or news sheet, but you report to the students and to the staff, and yes, they will take that back home and say our school is getting, we got 3 new computers. You must always reach out to the community, and that is where success will come from. They've got buses. In my school, I usually say, guess what? We have all the leaders in, if you're at St. John's College, you've got the Prime Minister's children. You got the Dean of Galen School children, because you're one of the schools that impresses the country. And every school must try to impress the country at their level. Independence High School, when it started, didn't get students from Placentia. They were going to Belize City. They were going to in Dangriga. We must build a school culture that will make it an ownership of the community. The school is owned by the community, and the business people in the community will send their children there once you buy in, will provide the financial resources you need because they want their children and their community to have the best. So for me, it is buy-in. So if I were at an educational institution today and that I get that opportunity through coaching to tell them, guess what? You need to utilize the community resources. You need to be accountable. You need to go out of the way to visit the community, to visit those business places, to say thank you, because when you're having a fair, they will give a fridge, a stove, a computer, and you make sure that you send thank you, beautiful thank you notes, letters to them. And that is sufficient. That is all they want. You acknowledge that they are, you put on a roll on the wall of your school. These are people that have donated $5, $100, $1,000, $10,000. It's a marvelous experience working with people at the community level. And I'm sure, well, St. John's College, in talking to the vice principal and the other teachers that I work with, and I tell them, you've got your student alumni can make a difference in your school, and they do. So I would want included accessing resources with all the other attached them, accountability, reporting back to parents, saying thank you, and working as if the school belongs to them, and it does belong to them. And it's an enjoyable experience from what I have seen and what I have done.
Okay, thank you very much, Walter, for that extended explication as to what you think will happen. Karim, what do you think we can do in Belize to improve the leadership pool of the country, the school, the education leadership pool of the country? What do we need to do that we are not doing now? And I'm going to ask a similar question to Sharda, which is about what are they doing in Trinidad and Tobago, and what are they doing in the larger region in terms of improving their leadership pool that is more responsive to the current crisis facing the education system. Yes, Karim.
Well, I think one thing that can be done, I think it is being done at Galen University, is creating opportunities for potential leaders to get or to obtain certificates or degrees in educational leadership. So I think that's a starting point. I think under that banner, or under maybe the Ministry of Education banner, I think something that would also assist is if schools, present administrative body, be it the principal or vice principals, if a mentorship program could be developed, I'm not sure under which umbrella, but can be developed for teachers and heads of department who want to be potential leaders in the future, so that they are being mentored and coached along for 1, 2, 3 years prior to holding a leadership position. And I think that would surely assist a lot of teachers or a lot of new leaders, because normally the transition from being a teacher to an administrator is a drastic transition with many gaps in between. And so I think a mentorship program would assist to make the transition a little smoother.
Well, thanks very much. Now, what are you doing? Sharda, what are you guys doing in Trinidad and Tobago? And maybe you could inform us as what is happening in the larger Anglophone Caribbean in terms of tackling this leadership crisis, or this pending leadership crisis in the education system.
The thing is, Dr. Barrow, we have the current system of putting school leaders in place needs to be revisited tremendously. We have a systemic process that we use in Trinidad. Likewise in some of the Caribbean territories as well, where we appoint principals based on a seniority ranking and a seniority list and so on. And then the denominational boards will appoint based on those who meet the religion criteria and other criteria by the board itself. Now, the thing about it is that most principals, in fact, all principals, their position would have originated from that of a teacher. All right, that is not to say that these principals will not make good leaders. But the thing about it is that we cannot wait until they get into the principalship office before we start, before they gain those experiences. We need to understand that training for success or succession planning for schools need to be a process which has to start long in advance. You have teacher leadership capabilities in many of your teachers, and many of them might exhibit those leadership qualities in different realms under the umbrella of their teaching responsibilities. However, we in Trinidad, there is a dire need to really revisit qualifications, and certification does not necessarily mean that you make a good leader, all right, or you make a good principal. The thing about it is that the way the process operates is that you identify, people apply, the vacancies are advertised, people apply, individuals apply, and the Teaching Service Commission will go on the basis of the criteria they use, which will be your qualification, your experience, your seniority, and so on, and then you fulfill the office. And while some people may be very good at interviews and may pass the interview very well, that doesn't necessarily mean to say that they can execute the vision of a school, they could foster collaboration collaboration, they can put the children at the center of what they do. So we have to understand that one, training for leadership has to be a critical component in our country if we are serious about producing future leaders in our school. And training for leadership should not be something which comes only when you enter the vice principalship office or the middle leader office in the position of heads of department or dean. It should start long before. There should also be those professional qualifications and those professional training, mentorship, hands-on, skills-based experiences. And really, good principals produce future good principals, and principals must act knowing that anytime they can be displaced. So ongoing training in your school through collaboration, principals must be able to empower others. So at any minute, understanding that your office could be replaced by someone else, and you should know that when you are not in office or you're not there, that school should be able to run on autopilot. And that is where practical training and practical skills need to be oriented in all of us, especially when you take up leadership positions. But there is a need by our Ministry of Education, a dire need. Just like Karim said, mentorship, but more so which is skills-based or practical-based, not certification-based. We have lots of brilliant people in Trinidad and Tobago. We do, but we need to have people who can experience administration from the onset, from a very early stage in their career trajectory, and make a decision whether or not they are cut out to be leaders or not. And more, we have the retention rate for principals dropping, and we also have more people declining from the administrative responsibilities, and we need to ask ourselves why.
Well, thank you. Walter, you have the last word on this. What from your vast experience?
Sharda said a lot there.
And from your current
training, by design, every principal, this is why I'm so proud of Galen and the program that it's doing and the coaching. They have not left it to chance that these teachers in training get additional support, guidance, help, encouragement to become the best leader, because there first should be a desire in the person. They want to be a leader, because you can be an excellent math teacher or science teacher or social studies teacher and not be a successful principal. As a principal, you have to be a caring, genuinely accommodating person who cares for the people and your staff. The transition shouldn't be by chance. I knew at Independence High School that at 55 I wanted my pension to enjoy, because too many people die at 56 and 57. I collected my pension, but there was another reason. I had an excellent vice principal who needed to get an opportunity to shine, and shine, that is exactly what he has done. And there's another school that can, EP York, they have made transition from one principal to another, and there has not been a seam or a hitch. You don't hear them in the news about financial crisis and administrative crisis. If you have, by design, it should be, we know that we are going to get old. That is why we want children to carry on our legacy. In the very same thing in institutions, we need principals, and we need principals who will scout out. If they are principal for 1 year, when I went to Compre, by design, I had teachers doing understudy. We called understudy of the principal, and I had 2 vice principals, understudy of the heads of department, because we must be seeking out, just like how scouts go and look for good basketball players' potential. We should see potential. They're caring, they're able to communicate their ideas, they are accommodating, they are good listeners, they are impartial, they are fair, they're honest, they show accountability, they show transparency in their administration, they do good financial management, budgeting, distribution of resources, they care for their teachers, these poor teachers that have to be getting up 5 o'clock in rural areas, getting on buses over most terrible roads. They say even plane bunks over the road. The roads are so, those teachers and students have to get on those buses 5 o'clock in the morning. They get back home 6 o'clock in the evening tired. Then they're forced to do too much planning, too much continuous fundraising. This conversation, I don't have time to say what I think about this, but try to get people who want to be leaders of schools. And that creates a lot of problem because there are religious influences, there are political influences, there are cultural influences, and who should be the leader in succession. So it is much more than just on the surface what we are saying. But if by design within the school culture, they are looking at potential leaders. If I were to go to BAPS tomorrow or to CAPS, that would be my sermon. That is what I would preach. Try to find principals who believe that they are going to die, they will leave, and that school should run. When I used to leave my school, because some principals say they can't leave their school, I say when I leave my school, I say if it's going to fall or fail or burn up without me there, let it burn up. Because somebody should be there that takes over the reign. And my vice principal and my heads of department and even my student leaders and PTNU when I was going to these conferences so that they can support the school. And I tell my students, guess what? When I leave here, I want you to be better behaved than when I'm here. Because there's more pressure on the people who are administering the school, who are running the school. And it has worked, and I'm sure it can work. And I've seen it at EP York and at Independence High School. I haven't heard their name after I left there over 20 years ago. And that is what we want, that the school that comes after me, we wish that we had the same in politics and in the school culture and in the religious section and everywhere, that there's a smooth transition. People know they're going to die. They live as if they were going to die. They live every day as if it was their last. And if tomorrow they die, the people after them will be able to run the school, run the classroom, run the communities, just the way it was going so smoothly when Miss Sharda was there, or Dr. Juan was there, or Dr. Dorian was there, or Mr. Garbutt was there.
Well, Walter, we will have to leave it at that. I would like to thank all three of you, Dr. Juan, Ms. Sharda, and Mr. Garbutt, for being such a wonderful host and for really shedding some light on this issue. My takeaway is this, that whatever the challenges your school face or your school faces, leadership will require a mix of short-term steps and long-term planning to address the key structures in your organization and the changing circumstances that surrounds it. Thank you, lady and gentlemen, for focusing on this crisis tonight, and I wish you all well and good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Take care. Bye.